You are watching TV47, the home of untold stories. Disability is not only limited to physical disorder, but also mental issue. From depression,
I was under depression for like 2 years.
Bipolar.
Bipolar disorder is a mood disorder.
And even suicidal thoughts.
When I was just about to hang myself, a certain voice just talked to me, and I believe that was God. I tried suicide more than 6 times.
Beyond the Limit has gone beyond its limit to find answers so as to help everyone go through life with ease. Join Muthoni Maina every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Starting this September at 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday, the Realtor brings it all to perspective. We identify a property, discuss and demonstrate the journey towards ownership.
Professionals who have integrity, and from their catalog you can easily read that these are professionals who are able to deliver.
Everywhere you go, you have to up your games, you have to go with the trends.
Not forgetting the margins as well as the risks that come along.
The runaway prices of the land. We are saying that it's something that we can never go without mentioning. Any developer will not go without mentioning price of land.
Don't miss out.
President Ruto's entry and a little bit of politics about what has been happening in the country over the past few days. And to do that with me, I have Dr. Fred Ogolla, who's a governance expert with us right in studio. Karibu sana to the studio, sir.
Thank you very much, Eric.
And then, of course, on his left is Owuor Jerry, who's an advocate of the High Court. Karibu sana.
Thank you for having me tonight.
And I want to start with you, Jerry. Azimio la Umoja, One Kenya Alliance presidential candidate in the just concluded presidential election, the general election. We've heard what he said. He said that he's bashed the judiciary in not so kind words, and saying that now it's time to push for constitutional reforms, and I want to hear your views on that.
Let me start by registering my utter disappointment in the sentiments made by the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga in his comments bashing the judiciary. We have a country that has struggled so much of entrenching judicial independence, particularly institutional and decisional independence. Now, prior to the election time, Mr. Odinga was on record having been noted saying that he was going to accept the decision of the Supreme Court, notwithstanding how it goes. But now we see a man who is quite very determined in breaking the institutions that work, which is very quite disappointing.
Ogolla.
Yes.
Wakili Jerry has an opinion that Raila should just accept and move on, but he seems to have some valid reasons for him to say what he said today, and I want to hear your views on that as well.
Yeah, I think what is critical there is how you make your statements, even if you're disappointed. Disappointments are there normally in life, and after losing, we can feel that you can react in one way or the other, but also we believe that he's a very experienced person. Actually, you can say he's among the eldest in terms of politics, standing still, and I'm sure he should not be able to know how to respond to those kind of disappointments. But I would like to echo what my friend has said, Jerry, that I think that it is not fair enough to attack judiciary at that rate that has been attacked. At the same time, also we must be cautious of the fact that we all can't go to bed with all that decision, because the truth is in the middle between two extremes. There's an extreme that is very happy with the decision from the Supreme Court, and there's a team that is not happy. And I think that the truth is not in Kenya Kwanza, the truth is not in Azimio, the truth is not judiciary, but the truth is somewhere. Because why I'm trying to say that somehow we have to be cautious in the fact that you know that judiciary is now getting everything they want. The president has just been elected. He's just actually assigned and confirmed 6 judges that were pending. You saw that Judiciary has been going to bed with, it seems, with the executive, and we must be sure that we have to keep these lines separate. If we don't keep these lines separate, who will stand there for Njiku? Remember, the only hope that always made people not to have violence is that if you have unfairness, you must go to Judiciary. Now, the budget being added, you know, when I tell you, I'm going to add you 3 billion each and every year, but there is no justification for that. I'm sure, even if your wife tells you, add me 20,000 shillings to my budget every month, you have to give an extra 20,000 shillings, and with no reason, you may say, are we having an extra chance?
Sorry, let me cut you short there. Former Chief Justice David Maraga had been complaining during the second term of Uhuru and Ruto's regime.
Yeah.
He complained of budget cuts. What do you mean by giving Judiciary money that is not justified?
You see, like, look here, Judiciary receives 8.1 billion every year in annual budget, eh? Now, why is this addition? Is it inflation? If Judiciary has been functioning with 8.1 billion, why are we adding 3 every year? You see, consecutively, he says he will add every year. So just look at how many years the president will have in his term. It will be 5 years, isn't it? So next year, he's going to make it 11.1. Then it will go, so you can add 3 times 5, that is 15 billion, will be added to 8.1. So it means that by the end, we shall be having how much? 23.1 billion budget, when they were using previously 8.1. Eric, I'm sure your salary is not increasing like that. Is your taxes increasing like that? So if you look at that kind of picture, I ask myself, why should you promise somebody such a thing? Look at all those things. And in fact, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm guarded that, remember, Judiciary getting everything they want from the executive, does it mean that finally Judiciary is going to bed with executive? It's always fair that whatever the executive wants, some they get, some they don't get. Legislature, sometimes they ask for something, they get, sometimes they don't find. If that is happening across all the arms of government, then you must know the government, all the arms of government are not in bed with each other. Wanjiku can only be guarded by Judiciary. Sometimes they remain the last person standing in the whole drama when executives want what they want, politicians what they want. Look, executive did very well, but Judiciary did very well by taking about Supreme Court and CDF. Remember the CDF issue? That one is showing that the Judiciary is trying to be independent against Parliament. Now let's wait for Parliament to open and see what Parliament is going to do about that. So Eric, with Jerry, in as much as I don't like attacking any institution, because you should go and reform the Constitution rather than complaining in public, at the same time, we have to put every institution into check.
Okay, Jerry, it's not that it really matters, but what Ogolla is saying, what Dr. Ogolla is saying is very, very important. There are some perceptions that are being made by the seemingly new relationship between the executive and the judiciary. There's a perception that is being made by the dalliance of the judiciary and the executive, as well as the executive praising Chief Justice Martha Koome and IEBC Chairperson Wafula Chebukati. And I'm saying, not that it really matters institutionally, but don't you think that is really bad for optics?
Let me begin by seeking a clarification from you. When you are asking my colleague, Dr. Ogolla, the question that you asked him, you mentioned that the former Prime Minister has valid reasons of saying whatever that he said. What valid reasons are those? But before I even come to your question, let me correct him that there is every justification in the increase of the budgetary allocation to the judiciary. Why am I saying so? International standards, particularly those embodied in what we call Bangalore principles of judiciary, requires that every judicial arm of each country's government must receive at least 5% of the total national revenue that that country collects and the total budgetary allocation of that country. In Kenya here, in our own wisdom or lack thereof, we decided to entrench it in law by allocating the judiciary 3% of the total budgetary allocation to the judiciary. From the financial year that Uhuru Kenyatta took office up to when he was leaving, judiciary has never even gotten 1% of the total budgetary allocation. So these increases are actually embedded in law and they are justified. But now coming back to your question, which is rather unfortunate. I say unfortunate because when we have a government, and by government I mean the executive, that is hell-bent towards improving and implementing the tenets of principles of rule of law, that is actually something that should be lauded. He has said there's no justification. I say there's every justification. And this justification exists particularly in the mwananchi, the ordinary mwananchi itself, himself or herself. Why am I saying so? Today, if you go to most courts, especially the Environment and Lands Court, you find that those cases take up to 10 years to be determined. Why? Because of lack of human personnel in the form of judges, lack of infrastructure. There are certain places in this country where courtrooms and court sessions take place under the trees, in kiosks. Very unfortunate. Now, we cannot say that the increase on the budgetary allocation to the judiciary is unjustified. It has every justification and it is embedded in law.
Now Eric, just to give me a moment there.
Okay. Yeah.
I think if you say justification, what I said, we didn't hear justification. If you had, let us hear. But at the same time, let's just be fair. Abuja Declaration says that 15% of the GDP, or if you like, the national budget, should go into health, isn't it? We are doing 3%, isn't it? There is no arms of government or any sector in the economy that is getting what they want. And I can say lawyers, legal people, made it very easy for them to enjoy this country. For example, IBC, you must be a lawyer. This one, you must be a lawyer. So we cannot just be working for an economy for lawyers.
What do you mean by for you to work for the electoral body, you have to be a lawyer? Because
no, but you see, the Constitution says very well, isn't it?
No,
the Constitution is clear that has created position for lawyers that you must be a lawyer to be there. I don't think there's any constitution that says for you to be, you must be a journalist. Can you imagine, Eric? For you, there is no thing in the constitution that states, they even gone to the constitution by allocating to them what they want. Who writes the constitution? Lawyers. So they even put the amount of money they want there. So let's forget about that a little bit. That's not fair, isn't it? Let me just try to justify my point, isn't it? What we are seeing here is why is the priority of the president, isn't it? Cost of living, isn't it? Fuel crisis is there. We're having people going on empty stomach. Why the hurry to allocate budget and empower IBC? Why the hurry to empower police by giving them even a separate budget? Why the hurry to go and put money in judiciary? For me, I would ask that this should be very cautious because it's suspect. Because if you saw the demonstration by Okia Mutata, what he said, that President Uhuru Kenyatta gave President Ruto two things, the Constitution, another one, the sword.
But that was
he took the Constitution, put it down, but carried the sword up. So the issue here, we must just, I'm not saying there's something wrong. We must keep the president and all his officers honest.
Okay.
Our work, me and you, that's why the media is called the fourth estate, isn't it? Because we have the first estate, public sector. We have the second estate, private sector. The third estate is NGO. The fourth estate now has to keep the three estates in check. So we cannot just say, oh, there must be something good. I can tell you that this is not the right thing to do. We must come with the proper. Some, he said, we shall put a commission to inquire. Here, I declare immediately. So according to me, if judiciary is getting everything they're asking for from the executive and other people are not getting, then is it a Wanjiku budget or it is a judiciary budget? But that's my question.
But just briefly, I just want to hold you to that.
Yes.
To be fair to the president, he said that he sat down with his advisors, and this besides the point, but very briefly, I want to hear your reactions to it. He said he's going to scrap some subsidies that he has blamed for the situation that we are currently in. Isn't that, doesn't that speak volumes about his priorities? Very briefly, because I want to move on.
No, because what's happening here is that he's going away from his promises, which are there, 9 of them. I read them to you here before the thing, isn't it? And I told you there, Eric, before that, this is an extractivist policy. There's 2 types of economy: extractivist economy policy and productive economy. When you are giving people subsidy here, subsidize fuel, subsidize hunger, subsidize everything, it is like keeping a country on a handout. The best way to keep a country going is to let the fundamentals of the economy work. Okay. Whereby, when people are being put afloat, because subsidies are to put your head out of water, isn't it? But once your head is out of water, we need to stabilize the economy so that the parameters of the economy work. Supply, demand works to determine prices, rather than somebody giving subsidies. It is not sustainable. I agree with him. But why did he promise people that he's going to do it? So I believe that not giving people price of hunger, not giving the hunger the way he promised, not subsidizing fuel the way he did, but being in a hurry to appoint judiciary, being in a hurry to reward people with money, being in a hurry to empower the police. Do you know what he calls control of state institution? We call them institutional capture. You capture the judiciary, you capture IBC, you capture the police, you capture military. Okay, how can you leave power? So I'm going to be very careful. I'm not saying he has, but by giving rewards to these very important institutions beforehand, it is not giving priority to Wanjiku. Because for me, who voted? Wanjiku voted. Our Wanjiku is waiting for unga, Wanjiku is waiting for subsidies. If you are in a hurry to give the people who don't demand, I'm thinking, Wakili, you guys are not as badly off as those people on the ground there.
Fair enough. Wakili Jerry, the former running mate, or rather the running mate to Azimio la Umoja, One Kenya Alliance presidential candidate Raila Odinga, that is Martha Karua, in the just concluded election, says that she acknowledges that the ruling or the judgment of the Supreme Court on the presidential petition is final, but she says that she'll go ahead and take her case to the East African Court of Justice. I'm looking at a situation where, because she's been there before and she got a favorable ruling, what now happens? Should she get a favorable ruling to Azimio? What will that say about our judiciary, and what are the chances that she is going to get such a ruling, in your point of view?
Before I answer you, let me just begin by correcting my...
Okay, very briefly.
Yes, yeah. The Constitution does not say that for you to work for IEBC, you must be a lawyer. That is false. It is only the position of the chairperson of the IEBC that the educational requirements are that of an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. In fact, those equivalent to the qualification for appointment of a judge of a High Court. For a commissioner, anyone can be, provided you have some experience in management, anything. Even him, he qualifies to be a commissioner for IEBC. I wonder why he didn't apply last year when the OPEC 4 were being recruited. But
okay, let's move on now to the court in Arusha, the East African Court of Justice. From where you sit, what are the chances that she might get a favorable ruling, because she seems so determined to do that?
I do not want to preempt on her chances of success, because you see, one of the things that you're taught in law school is not to be hypothetical. And because I was a very good student, I'm not going to be hypothetical. Okay. But let me look at the nitty-gritties of even getting there. In 2017, after she was flawed by the current Kirinyaga governor, Anne Waiguru, yes, she appealed up to the Supreme Court. And the aspects in which the Supreme Court knocked out her case was on the procedural aspects of filing the appeal out of time. Now she went to the East African Court of Justice, and East African Court of Justice rendered its decision and said that let there be substantive justice done to Martha Karua. And she was awarded some I think it was 7.2 million Kenya shillings as damages for violation of her right to access to justice. But the problem with the problem that I have, and even any country would have, with the decisions rendered by such regional courts, even the International Criminal, the
International Court of Justice.
Yes, not International Court of Justice, The Hague, that is established by the Rome Statute, is to do with the issue of implementation. How do you implement the decisions of regional and international adjudicative bodies, considering the fact that one of the main principles of international law is the principle of sovereignty. So this sovereignty should mean that our internal affairs and systems are equidistant from international politics and those international factors. That is where the problem would lie. And even if you could ask Martha Karua, she has not been paid around 7.2 million Kenya shillings that she was awarded by the East African Court of Justice. And I doubt if she will ever be paid, because these regional courts and international courts and adjudicative bodies lack implementation mechanisms. I usually compare them with a very huge monster with no hands to bite, to grab you, no teeth to bite, no legs to walk on. They are just there to frighten you. And that is the reality on the ground for most countries that have acceded, even for us to Kenya, which is now a member of the treaty establishing the East African Court of Justice. No court will implement such decisions.
But our jurisprudence will mature, will grow?
It is not even about the issue of jurisprudence. It is the issue to do with sovereignty. We are sovereign, and we have a judicial process that you have already gone through. Of course, one might argue that by dint of Article 2.5 and Article 2.6 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, which allows and permits the rules of international law that that Kenya has actually ratified to form part and parcel of the law, you could come through that. But the interpretation that courts have adopted is that those treaties and international laws fall under the Constitution. So the Constitution rank higher than them, and then they come under the Constitution. So we have the Constitution, which has already set down the parameters of solving a dispute which he wants to take to the Supreme Court in the form of a presidential election petition. And we saw what, rightfully so in my view, the judges of the Supreme Court of Kenya came up with.
With some not so kind language, of course, to the
which is justified, because some of the counsels who presented evidence in the Supreme Court petition hearing were actually indicted for forgery, which is a very serious offense of perjury in Kenya.
Well, thank you very much, Wakili Jerry Owuor. And I want us to continue this discussion, but I want us to take a very, very short break. Remember, this is Game Plan 2022. You can be part of this conversation by texting us on 22047. That is our SMS line. We are on Twitter at TV47KE. My handle is at Eric_Munene. And I do understand that my director would wish us to continue. We won't take that short break, but I want us to bring it to you, Dr. Ogolla. And we'll come back to the issue of the judiciary. But currently, as things are, you've talked about the priorities by the president. There's the issue of fuel subsidy. There's the issue of subsidies for fertilizer. And the justification that the advisors are coming up with is that, especially for fuel subsidy, is that there was money just that was set aside for a few big boys. But now that is a thing of the past. And I want to hear your reactions on that.
Yeah, of course, you see the budget that we have now, we start from the budget. Uhuru Kenyatta's last treasury raid 3.3 trillion budget. And now, if you look at the policies, because after election took place, there was a lot of cloud hanging on whether we shall have the president by 13th during the Supreme Court or not. And there are even scenarios that we could even take 2 years before that. So Treasury, in its own prudence, decided to now start making budget policies based on President Uhuru Kenyatta's policy, meaning that they were going to look for how to spend the 3.3 trillion based on President Uhuru Kenyatta's policy. Now, if you see that looking at the manifesto and the economic policy of His Excellency President Ruto, we find that that budget cannot hold. So I did the calculations and found out that if we put all those things together, they were going to need an extra 1.7 trillion outside the 3.3 trillion. You can get those numbers, for example, the hustler, what they call the hustler fund. You can go to the subsidies of fuel per day, consumption, you can calculate all that. You can go to the issue of the gender. You can take the one for the guaranteed minimum returns. You can go to fertilizer, all that. It's going to be outside. Remember, the 3.3 trillion budget had a deficit of 826 billion shillings, which means that how are you going to get this 1.7 trillion outside the budget which was read in Parliament? If you go to read a supplementary budget in Parliament, you can't make it. So because of that, you have to look for a way to cut. But you see now, when you say there are some of them who are put for boys, that one we can't discuss in TV because we shall just be using data which is based on rumors. I'm sure that TV 47 may not be very happy with us. So what we know here is that maybe he discovered that it is going to be very hard to finance the subsidies. And now he found a way, like now I'm hearing some rumors, they're going to get maize from Congo. Then they are going to get millers, which is mill them and sell to Kenya. Those are still just rumors because he's not said about them. I think what we need to be here is that we have a new president. We should not start throwing a lot of mud. We should just listen to what he says and try to logically evaluate whether they are making sense or not. Because you see what's happening. All of us want Kenya to move on, even if I go to what he's trying to say. Taking us again to East African Court of Justice. Why are we going there? I'm sure that Kenya needs to go forward. You can't be happy with everything. Eric, you know myself, I'm not happy with the decision which was made, isn't it? But at the same time, what is important is we have to look at a larger picture.
Yes.
I'm only one person in Kenya. Raila Amolo Odinga is only one person in Kenya. I like the fact that he took this thing to court. How the evidence was brought to court, how the court went through about making the ruling is a case for all lawyers and even legal students, law students, to evaluate, and that research can improve how we can do our cases going forward. But for now, you don't have to do. And I give me a very nice example.
Okay.
There's this guy called Socrates. Socrates was a very good guy because he was helping the Greeks to understand how people should be honest about leadership. Of course, the leadership in Greece said he was trying to manipulate the youths, so they asked him he must drink poison and die. So his friends told him, my friend, let's try to get you out of Greece. Then he said, I'm a Greek. I cannot escape from Greece. I will use the same laws of Greece. Even if they are killing me, I was born here, I lived here. I cannot denounce my laws. So I'm asking all Kenyans, in as much as we don't agree, we are all Kenyans, we were born in Kenya, we are brought in the Kenyan environment, Kenyan legal environment. We cannot say we don't like Kenyan legal environment when they're against us, and when they are for us, we say we like it. Let's embrace it when it is bad and when it is good. Yeah. Not only Raila Odinga is unhappy, many people are unhappy, but let us find on how we can learn from what went wrong. But also I can say that if you look at the way they handle the whole case, they handle the whole campaign, there are also pointers to believe that there's some self-inflicted pain that was there. Okay. Like now, if you look at the approach, you go to court, you start sweating, you start singing ping pong. What people needed was put evidence on the table. You understand? Yes. I'm not saying there's no evidence because I'm not a Supreme Court lawyer, but the little law I know is that the Supreme Court find it very easy to escape all the 9 petitions. Imagine all 9 petitions. But for me, what is amazing about Supreme Court, I don't want to go to cry about it. Okay. How can 9 judges, 7 judges, agree on 9 issues unanimously? For me, that's amazing. Because in my house, I have a wife, I have 2 children, and a house help. Just to agree on where to have lunch, I have to do a lot of lobbying, isn't it?
Yes.
And sometimes not unanimous. We tell them, okay, for you, if you have nothing, we can buy you chips on the way because we cannot take chips for us, we're elders. So it is incredible how 9 judges can, 7 judges can agree on 9 issues unanimously. I think for me that one is the incredibleness. But even without taking case, we go and study. How did they reach the same decision?
Okay. 7
people about 9 petitions.
Okay.
But the best thing is, let's people move on. People have been hungry, economy is hurting, inflation is at 8.6%. It will go to 9% if we continue with the cases. People need to go to work.
And I have a viewer here who has something for you, Dr. Ogolla, JKL_254. He says, Harry, and he's reacting to the issue of you saying that the president was hurrying in trying to bring the judiciary on his side. He says, Harry, it's something that should have happened a long time ago. Let's support the independence of our institutions. We'll leave it at that. Wakili Jerry, do you think with these changes, the changes that Dr. Ogolla seems to think that are kind of hurried by the president, do you think the former President Uhuru Kenyatta had some good legal advice?
Every wrong advice that former President Uhuru Kenyatta received went wrong. Everything that he could have possibly been advised on the wrong side, was absolutely wrong. The process of recruitment of judges of Superior Court is well laid down in Judicial Service Act and the Constitution of Kenya 2010. The President's role in appointment of judges of Superior Courts is nothing but ceremonial. You do not have the discretion to say yes or no. But let's go to the reason as to why Uhuru Kenyatta was declining to appoint the judges. Up to today, no one, not even you, not me, not Dr. Ogolla, knows the real reason why he refused to appoint the 6 judges that he declined to appoint. Except for the fact that...
I'll give you an opportunity to tell us.
Except for the fact that there was an adverse report on these 6 judges. Now, I ask myself, when the Judicial Service Commission advertises for vacancies of judges, it places out there an advert on Kenya Gazette. We will be recruiting judges. The following have been shortlisted for interview. If you have any report, adverse report on the following candidates, please present it with the commission. Why was such an adverse report not presented before the Judicial Service Commission for interrogation? It reminds me on how they actually hounded Lord Justice Warsame, member of Judicial Service Commission and Court of Appeal judge, in his recruitment as a member of Judicial Service Commission. They did everything to make sure that Warsame never got to the Judicial Service Commission on these flimsy accusations that there's an adverse report about him from the NIS. We all agree that those reports are confidential information, not subject to access by Kenyans. But there's a rider on it. If it is required for the exercise of a constitutional duty, such as the Judicial Service Commission's duty, such information is subject to disclosure. Why didn't Uhuru Kenyatta and his NIS disclose such adverse report?
Even if it is classified?
Yes. Because the moment you are telling us that I have an adverse report against Eric, Eric has to be informed of that charge. Eric has to be given the opportunity to be heard. Eric has to be given the opportunity to defend himself from those accusations that you are leveling as classified adverse report on Eric. He has the right to actually defend himself against such accusations.
Okay, you're saying out of 40 judges, Uhuru had issues with only 6. He appointed 34, and he had personal issues with only 6, and you think it's just personal, in your opinion?
Uhuru did not have an issue with the 6 judges. Uhuru had an issue with the entire 40 judges.
Okay.
This is because he took 2 years in appointing the rest of the 34. One actually passed on before being appointed. So we have a constitutional timeline of the president appointing the judges within 30 days from the date of recommendation by the Judicial Service Commission. He took 2 years, taking us in meanders and circles and scattering around his constitutional duty of appointing the 6 judges. For 2 good years, he decides to appoint 34.
And I see Dr. Ogolla wants to react to that. But in November last year, the Court of Appeal temporarily suspended an order directing Uhuru to swear in the 6 judges within 2 weeks. Justices Roslyn Namboye, Wanjiru Karanja, and Imana Laibuta granted the orders after Uhuru rushed to the appellate court, arguing that there was an imminent danger of embarrassment and uncertainty in the dispensation of justice if the directive remained unchallenged. There's an executive order that was signed. The judges are now sworn in. What now happens in such a situation? Isn't it confusing?
No, it is not confusing. The effect of appointing the judges of the Court of Appeal now, whom I congratulate because they are some of the very brilliant legal minds we have in Kenya today, means that the case pending before the Court of Appeal has determinated. Because the Court of Appeal decision staying the implementation of the High Court's decision was not a determinate finding. It was an interlocutory finding, which really you simply have to show very simple things. It was not on merit. You simply have to show that if we am not granted stay, my appeal will be rendered nugatory, which is true. And so on that reason, they got the Uhuru and Paul Kihara, whom is advised Uhuru thoroughly, got stay orders, which is fine. But now the main appeal is still pending before the Court of Appeal. That now, coming back to your question, the appointment of the 6 judges that Uhuru Kenyatta unconstitutionally secluded from appointing determinates the case at the Court of Appeal, because there's no case to be determined really now, unless now you simply want Uhuru Kenyatta held constitutionally liable for failing to appoint the 6 judges, which he should be found for.
All right, Dr. Ogolla.
Yeah, Eric, you can already see that it sounds very clearly that the judiciary is very happy with the sitting
Should the
president.
judiciary be sad?
Yeah, they are happier than I thought. But that's fine. Now, let me just try to bring in the case that, you know, when you are in a court of appeal, you are at a very high level of responsibility. That even insinuation that you could be having anything that is questionable should not be there. Could you imagine if Martha Koome was there sitting as Chief Justice reading a ruling on the presidential petition, and you have a very serious, or if you like, an allegation against her on matters of ethics and integrity? They say that the wife of Caesar should not just be clean, but also should be seen to be one. So I'm sure I would agree with President Uhuru Kenyatta that that is his decision. But he didn't stop President Ruto from appointing those people. Now, the best way to look, the test the pudding, the way to do it is in the eating. Why don't we just wait for a few days? You'll start hearing these circles going on. In fact, what will be happening is that you may just see slowly by slowly that maybe our representation from judiciary is deteriorating, because I'm very concerned with my colleague here who is a lawyer who does not see the plight of Wanjiku and is just here pushing the plight of the judiciary. And I think that's the balance that President Uhuru Kenyatta must have taken, because it could have created some conflict in him. What I'm trying to say here is that President Uhuru Kenyatta tried through even the issue of asset recovery policies to ensure that we reduce the issue of corruption, because judiciary was not helping much. In fact, the asset recovery strategy as a way to reduce corruption was more effective than the judiciary, because they never even reached out anywhere where we never recovered anything like, let's say, money stolen. But asset recovery strategy that was devised by President Uhuru Kenyatta was more effective than the entire judiciary. So what I'm trying to say here is what judiciary needs to do, they should also clean themselves up instead of making us remember that during Moi, judiciary was like a department in the office of the president. And we don't want to go there. We want to see this clear separation. Anytime you see your finance and auditor, finance manager and auditor working together, you are in trouble. because the auditor must check the finance. So
Dr.
they should
Ogolla,
not be together.
Let me just cut you short there. When Wakili was talking about this issue of the 6 judges who have been appointed by President Ruto, you said, yes, you have some information. And of course, I wouldn't want you to lay it bare right here on national television. But you said that, yes, you do have some information that they're not beyond reproach like the...
Yeah, because there was some information, I would say, that President Uhuru Kenyatta has to do with the intelligence report.
Hearsay on the back of hearsay.
But he also agreed that there was advance report. He agreed. What was the basis of that advance report? Can you disclose it? Just wait. Those advance report, isn't it?
Yes.
Of course, what he's trying to tell us, the advance report came later. You understand? Now, Eric, if you are doing your wedding, you are to do a wedding tomorrow, isn't it? And throughout your wife knew you are a clean guy. Then last minute, it emerges that you have children elsewhere. Can you say this wedding, people who had issues, pastor normally announced, so-and-so is wedding, if you have any issue, come to the pastor before this date. So if we know later, even if we know later, is it justifiable to hold? I think it is, because before you make the mistake, it's not too late to stop it. And I'm happy you now have them. Now what we will do, we'll wait and keep you check. Because here on TV 47, we shall be checking and tell you here, you'll call Wakili here again and tell them, you see that mess? It's because of that mess. And sometimes even for you may find yourself in court of appeal. Don't think it's only us. Even you may be in court of appeal. You may realize as judges with questionable background, when they are detected earlier, it's much better than when it is too late. And also, I respect President Uhuru Kenyatta so much. Now people can talk. Now you can say what you want to say. Wakili, I can tell you, when Judiciary may be on the street with the tear gas, you may realize that President Uhuru Kenyatta really kept the institution independent. That even made President Ruto become president even when he was not for it. I think give credit to him. Because he allowed IBC to be independent, National Security to be independent, he allowed Judiciary to be independent, and...
Is it his place really to allow?
Of course, because he had power. Sitting head of state has power. Remember, he can say no. How often did you see President Ruto, before he became president on campaign trail, say, please... He said, please, President, stay out of this. Please, President, don't subvert. He was requesting him. He was head of state. If you say a head of state has no power, then I'm sure, then that's what we carried the other day is not even useful. I agree he had power, but I'm saying out of integrity and respect to the Constitution, he allowed it to happen. Remember, even God, just even go to the Bible, God allowed the devil to tempt Job, meaning that it is not that if you have power, you can stop. He just allowed it. He just let it happen. And you obeyed the Constitution. He said, I'm going to hand over to you. You disagreed with my decisions, you Kenyans, but I'm going to hand power to the person you elected. That means that there's somebody who is magnanimous there. Let's respect that.
Wakili, I want us, just very briefly, because I want us to also talk about our country's foreign policy. Wakili, the Attorney General's office, and I don't want us to discuss personalities, that's a whole office. What should now be done moving forward if really they are found to have misled the former president, in your opinion?
Let me begin by responding to very unfortunate.
Just respond.
And if you do kindly, just...
I'll be very brief. Less than a minute.
Less. Okay, thank you.
Less than a minute. Dr. Ogolla, a constitutional duty and the fundamental freedoms and human rights entrenched in the Bill of Rights are not negotiable. They are entrenched in the Constitution. They are not exercisable upon Uhuru Kenyatta's
that one I know.
Just hold on.
That one I know.
Just hold on, Dr.
We will exercise our rights without apology, without fear, and without reservation.
But that one I know.
Whether Uhuru Kenyatta likes it or not.
Okay, go ahead.
Go to Uganda, Museveni does the opposite.
We are not in Uganda.
Let us go. Let's be honest.
Okay.
Let's
calm down.
I'm just trying to say it's good for people to give a legitimate thing, isn't it?
Yes.
I know, let's appreciate. People like appreciation. Just because we have a new president, you cannot just ignore the other one who has gone. Let's appreciate what somebody has done.
All right.
You cannot just throw a baby with bathwater. You like it or not like him, he's led you for 10 years. You've not gone to hell. We are in Kenya. Let's just be honest to appreciate you, Wakili. Appreciate that is something. Appreciation is a gift from God.
There is nothing to appreciate about
Wakili, and that's what we were talking about, not throwing the baby with the bathwater. Of course, that office has done a lot of great things. The office has done a lot of things, a lot of good things. From where you sit as an advocate of the High Court, what do you think should be done now moving forward for us to move on as a country?
The Office of the Attorney General's Act 2012 gives the president the leeway, an incoming president, to actually appoint a new Attorney General to advise him on various matters. Aside from that, there exists robust, clear provisions for removing the office bearer of the office Attorney General, because when you are the Attorney General or the Solicitor General, the back in the actions of that office stops with you.
Okay.
If Ruto, Dr. Ruto, the president, sees it in his own wisdom not to appoint a new Attorney General and Solicitor General to advise him, then these two gentlemen holding the office of the Solicitor General and Attorney General, that is Ogeto and Kihara Kariuki, must be removed from office for aiding and abetting violation of the Constitution. You remember Kihara Kariuki was actually defending Uhuru Kenyatta's failure to appoint the judges, while the High Court had actually made a determination that he was in violation of the Constitution before they even filed their appeal and application for stay. So in the event that William Ruto opts to continue serving with Paul Kihara Kariuki, Kihara Kariuki is only a person fit, a candidate fit for removal from office of the Attorney General for egregious violation of the Constitution.
All right, let's switch gears. Let's talk about something very different from that. Our country's foreign policy. Dr. Ogolla, we saw something that happened yesterday, something very curious. President Ruto saying that he rescinds the country's decision to recognize the country that is known as Western Sahara or Sahrawi as a country, and of course saying that the country is going to ensure that its mission in the country is going to be wound up very, very soon. But then again, he seemed to have backpedaled on that. In fact, he deleted the tweet that he had used to make, or rather pass that statement. In your view, what does that really say about our foreign policy? And this comes at the backdrop of course, receiving a representative, a very, very important person, the king from Morocco. What do you think this says about our foreign policy?
First of all, the gaps and the goobs from the current president is not something which is new. Remember, he made a very bad remark against DRC. I'm sure you heard yesterday about people who put on bell bottom. I don't know what you heard those things. There are two things here, Eric, that you have to know. There are two personalities. There are personalities that are very decisive, and there are people who take time like a rhino. You see, a rhino is an animal that when you try to throw a stone at it, you try to call name for it, it just keeps quiet. But when it turns to charge you, you feel the impact. That could be like, for example of President Uhuru Kenyatta. He doesn't run quickly and rush into things. And I think you could see that throughout his 10 years of presidency. We are very lucky to have a very decisive president. So the goodness about decisive people is that if they make the right decision, they move with it. In fact, this is the beauty of this president. Remember how he ran his campaign. He was on top of everything. He was very hands-on, and he made very decisive decisions in every stage of his campaign, choosing his running mate. You see what happened? He came in and made a good decision. Also on policy, decisive people look like St. Peter in the gospel. St. Peter was somebody who could make very clear pronouncement very quickly. If they were wrong, it was like day and night. Very wrong. If he was right, it was so clear. Even Jesus called him sometimes, "You are Simon, is the one I'm going to build my house, you are the rock." And somehow he was called the devil. So you could see this also going to happen to President Ruto a lot, because he's very decisive. I hope that he'll make more decisive decisions which are more positive, and this is a beautiful thing about him. But that was a gaffe, that was a goof. Those things, you don't do them. And I'm sure maybe now he needs people who he can run through his thinking before he makes the decision. But you know what? He's a very brilliant man. Mm-hmm. And the disadvantage of brilliant people is that they can over-rely on their brilliance. Mm-hmm. And they may ignore experience, which is also very important because experience brings wisdom, intelligence is brilliance. So if you're intelligent without wisdom, it can sometimes be a loose gun. You can just shoot without knowing where the bullet goes. So I guess that he will get advised. Also remember, he still do not have a Minister for Foreign Affairs now. I'm sure that soon he'll appoint his cabinet. And you know what's happening? There's a way executive order, the way the government works. The present issue is executive order. Ministry come with ministerial policies, and then they come with the execution framework from the state departments, and now they come with the strategy to do. So you see, that structure is still not there. Me, I'm praying that he appoints his cabinet very easily, very quickly. Remember, this is not a very easy decision. If it was easy, there are so many people waiting here to be appointed, and they will wait for long. So I'm guessing that will help him to further his what? Foreign policies. But for now, he will just wake up from his bedroom and tweet or make pronouncement. They may never be very tasty, but maybe the fact that he retracts them means that also he is somebody who can accept that something has gone wrong, which still I can consider not a very bad quality. It's a good quality.
Well, thank you very much. Wakili, as we wind this up, what do you think about that whole issue?
Two quick things. Number one, experience can never beat knowledge. Experience can never override knowledge, as he has alluded. Number two, the greatest illiterate person on earth is not one who cannot read, is not one who cannot write. Is one, but rather is one who cannot actually acknowledge that he has done a mistake and rectify a mistake.
Okay.
You learn and relearn. That is the most literate person on planet Earth. What am I saying? On the issue of Western Sahara, President Dr. William Ruto made a mistake in failing to recognize Western Sahara as a state. Western Sahara has been a state that has been colonized by Morocco for a very long time now, even after inclusion as a member of the African Union. So on that, I want to say respectfully, the president got it all wrong by revoking his recognition of Western Sahara as an independent state. But again, let's also look at the history behind recognition of states. Recognition of states depends on other states' recognition. Look, for example, like Biafra in Nigeria, when they attempted to have an international, not international, but self-determination right by seceding from Nigeria. Certain states recognized Biafra as an independent state. Certain states refused and declined to acknowledge Biafra as a state. But at the long tail of it, a majority of the states were not of the recognition that Biafra is a state. So in recognition of states, it depends with other states how the extent to which they recognize that these states are actually independent states. But I want to state very categorically clear that on this the president got it wrong. But he saw his mistake and he undid it. That is the most important thing. That is what you want in a man that you have entrusted to lead you as the president.
Well, thank you very much, Owuor Jerry, an advocate of the High Court, and of course, Dr. Ogolla. Always a pleasure having you in studio to discuss this very important issue, and that is the President Ruto's entry. And I want to call it a wrap at 59 minutes past 10 p.m. This has been Game Plan 2022. We're talking about a bit of politics in the country for the past few days. My name is Eric Munene, our sign language interpreter. Who was with me during the entire time is Anne Wairimu. God bless. Keep safe.